16-year-old Maya lived in a small, close-knit neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Her father, Marcus Johnson, was the heart of their community. He wasn't just a school teacher. He was someone who always went out of his way to help others. Whether it was tutoring kids after school, fixing a neighbor's broken fence, or organizing food drives for families in need, Marcus had a way of making people feel seen and valued. To Maya, he was more than just her dad. He was her hero. Every evening, Marcus would sit with Maya at the kitchen table, helping her with homework, or simply listening to her talk about her day. His warm smile and gentle advice made even the toughest problems seem manageable. But one fateful night, everything changed. The phone rang late in the evening, and when Maya answered, her world shattered. On the other end of the line was a police officer delivering the devastating news. Marcus had been shot and killed during an encounter with law enforcement. He was unarmed. The days that followed were a blur of tears, disbelief, and anger. Maya couldn't understand how something like this could happen to her kind, loving father. Her mother tried to stay strong for the family, but the weight of their loss was unbearable. Friends and neighbors came by to offer condolences, bringing casseroles and flowers, but nothing could fill the void left by Marcus's absence. The house felt eerily quiet without his laughter echoing through the halls. As word of Marcus's death spread, shockwaves rippled through the community. People gathered outside their home, lighting candles and sharing stories about how Marcus had touched their lives. A makeshift memorial grew on their front lawn. Flowers, handwritten notes, and photos of Marcus smiling surrounded by students. It was clear that his death wasn't just a personal tragedy for Maya and her family. It was a loss for the entire neighborhood. But amid the grief, there was also outrage. Details of what happened began to surface. Marcus had been pulled over for a minor traffic violation, and things escalated quickly. Witnesses claimed he posed no threat, yet shots were fired. The injustice of it all weighed heavily on Maya. She replayed the events in her mind over and over, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. How could the man who taught children about kindness and fairness be treated so unfairly himself? Preparing for Marcus's funeral was one of the hardest things Maya ever had to do. Picking out his suit, choosing hymns, and writing a eulogy felt surreal. Every decision reminded her that her father was gone forever. As the day of the funeral approached, Maya wrestled with conflicting emotions: grief, anger, confusion, and fear. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run away from the pain. But most of all, she wanted one last chance to hug her dad and tell him how much she loved him. Little did she know, that moment would come, but not in the way anyone expected. The day of Marcus's funeral arrived, heavy with sorrow and a sense of finality. The church was filled to capacity, with people spilling out onto the steps and into the parking lot. Friends, neighbors, former students, and even strangers who had been moved by Marcus's story came to pay their respects. The air was thick with emotion, muffled sobs, whispered prayers, and the occasional hymn sung in shaky voices. Maya sat in the front row between her mother and younger brother, clutching a tissue that was already soaked through from tears. When it was time for the family to approach the casket, Maya hesitated. She wasn't ready to say goodbye. Not yet. Her legs felt like lead as she stood, but something inside her pushed her forward. As she walked toward the open coffin, her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. There he was, her father, lying still, dressed in his favorite navy blue suit. He looked peaceful, almost as if he were sleeping. But Maya knew better. This wasn't her dad anymore. It was just his body, a shell left behind after his spirit had gone. Maya reached out and touched his hand, cold and stiff beneath her fingertips. A wave of grief crashed over her, stronger than ever before. Before anyone could stop her, she climbed into the coffin, wrapping her arms tightly around him. She pressed her face against his chest, just like she used to do when she was little and needed comfort. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll never forget you." The room fell silent. People gasped, some cried harder, and others simply stared in stunned disbelief. No one expected this, a teenage girl climbing into her father's coffin during his funeral. It was raw, heartbreaking, and deeply human. One woman murmured, "That poor child," while another wiped away tears, unable to look away. Even the pastor paused mid-prayer, unsure of what to do next. Maya's mother rushed forward, gently tugging at her daughter's arm. "Come on, sweetheart," she said softly. "You don't have to do this." But Maya shook her head, clinging tighter. For those few moments, she didn't care about propriety or tradition. All she cared about was holding her father one last time. Eventually, with the help of her mother and an aunt, she reluctantly stepped back, her cheeks wet with tears and her body trembling. What happened next amazed everyone. As Maya returned to her seat, a man near the back of the church stood up. His voice cracked as he began to sing, "Amazing Grace." One by one, others joined in, softly at first, then growing louder and more powerful. By the end of the song, the entire congregation was singing together, their voices blending in harmony. It was a moment of unity, of shared pain and hope, sparked by Maya's act of love and defiance. People couldn't stop talking about what they'd witnessed. Photos and videos of Maya hugging her father in the coffin began circulating online within hours. Strangers commented on how brave she was, how her actions captured the depth of loss that so many families endure. What started as a private moment of grief soon became something much bigger, a symbol of resilience and a call for change. And though Maya didn't realize it yet, her life, and the lives of countless others, was about to change forever. Within hours of the funeral, images and videos of Maya's emotional embrace with her father in the coffin began spreading across social media. The footage captured not just her grief, but also the raw humanity of a daughter saying goodbye to the man who meant everything to her. People all over the world watched, their hearts breaking for this young girl who had lost so much. Comments poured in from strangers, some offering condolences, others sharing their own stories of losing loved ones to violence or injustice. But it wasn't just sympathy that made Maya's story go viral. It was the symbolism behind her actions. To many, her act of climbing into the coffin represented something deeper, the pain and frustration felt by countless families who had lost someone they loved due to systemic failures. For Black communities especially, it struck a chord. Here was a teenager refusing to let her father's death be forgotten, even as she mourned him in the most vulnerable way possible. Her courage resonated with people on a profound level. Activists quickly took notice. Members of the Black Lives Matter movement reached out to Maya and her family, expressing their support and asking if they could amplify her story as part of their ongoing fight against police brutality. At first, Maya hesitated. She hadn't climbed into that coffin to make a statement. She'd done it because she needed to feel close to her dad one last time. But as more messages flooded in, from grieving mothers, angry siblings, and determined advocates, she realized her moment of personal loss had become something bigger than herself. One evening, a group of local activists visited Maya's home. They sat around the dining table where Marcus used to help Maya with her homework, sharing stories about their work and explaining how his death highlighted the urgent need for change. "Your father mattered," one activist told her gently. "And what happened to him shouldn't happen to anyone else. We want to honor his memory by fighting for justice, not just for him, but for everyone." Maya listened intently, her mind racing. She thought about her dad and how he always encouraged her to stand up for what was right. He taught her that even small actions could make a big difference. Could she really stay silent when so many others were counting on her? That night, after the visitors left, Maya stayed awake thinking. She scrolled through her phone, reading comments from people who said her story gave them strength. One message stood out: "You're proof that love is stronger than hate. Keep going." The next morning, Maya decided to take a step forward. With her mother's blessing, she created a simple social media account to document her journey. She posted a photo of her dad smiling at one of his students, along with a caption: "This is my dad. Marcus Johnson. He was kind, funny, smart, and full of life. He didn't deserve to die the way he did. I don't know what comes next, but I do know we can't let his death be in vain. Within minutes, the post gained thousands of likes and shares. Messages of support poured in from every corner of the globe. As days turned into weeks, Maya found herself connecting with people she'd never met. Families who had endured similar tragedies, activists working tirelessly for reform, and even celebrities using their platforms to spread awareness. Her story became a rallying cry, igniting conversations about accountability, equality, and the value of Black lives. What started as a private moment of grief had transformed into a spark of hope, lighting a fire that would soon grow into something far greater than Maya ever imagined. A few weeks after the funeral, Maya received an invitation from a local activist group to speak at a community rally honoring her father's memory. At first, she was hesitant. Public speaking had never been her strong suit, and the thought of standing in front of a crowd made her nervous. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized this could be her chance to keep her father's legacy alive. Marcus had always taught her that using your voice was one of the most powerful things you could do. If you see something wrong, he'd say, "Don't stay quiet. Speak up." With encouragement from her family and friends, Maya agreed to take the stage. The night before the rally, she sat at the kitchen table with her mom, scribbling notes on a piece of paper. She didn't want to write a formal speech. Instead, she wanted to share her heart. She wrote about how much her dad meant to her, how unfair his death felt, and why people needed to come together to demand change. When she finally went to bed, her mind buzzed with excitement and fear, but also a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since losing him. The day of the rally arrived, and the park where it was held buzzed with energy. Hundreds of people gathered, holding signs that read "Justice for Marcus" and "Black Lives Matter." Some brought flowers, others wore t-shirts with Marcus's smiling face printed on them. As Maya stood backstage, peeking through the curtain, her hands trembled. Her mother squeezed her shoulder and whispered, "You've got this, sweetheart. Your dad would be so proud." When Maya stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted into applause. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the sea of faces staring back at her. Then she spotted her younger brother waving enthusiastically from the front row, and she smiled despite herself. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "I'm not here because I want attention," she started, her voice shaky but clear. "I'm here because my dad deserves better than what happened to him. He was the kindest person I've ever known. He believed in helping others, in making the world a better place. And now he's gone, not because of an accident or an illness, but because of something that should never have happened." Her words grew stronger as she spoke, fueled by both grief and determination. She talked about how hard it was to wake up every morning, knowing her dad wouldn't be there to hug her or cheer her on. She described the pain of seeing her mother cry and the emptiness that filled their home without him. But she also spoke about hope, the hope that his death wouldn't be forgotten, that it would inspire people to fight for justice. "I'm just a kid," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I don't have all the answers. But I know this: we can't let fear stop us from doing what's right. My dad always told me that love is stronger than hate. So today, I'm asking you to join me, to stand up, speak out, and show the world that Black lives matter. Because if we don't, who will?" By the time she finished, tears streamed down her face, but the crowd was on its feet, cheering and clapping. People chanted her name, holding their fists high in solidarity. Maya looked out at the sea of supporters and felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. For the first time since her father's death, she felt like she wasn't alone. She had a community behind her, ready to fight alongside her. That night, as she lay in bed replaying the events of the day, Maya realized something important. Her dad may have been taken from her too soon, but his influence lived on, not just in her, but in everyone who heard her message. And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, she knew she had found her purpose. She would honor her father's memory by continuing to use her voice. And maybe, just maybe, help create a world where no one else would have to feel the pain she felt. Inspired by the overwhelming support she received at the rally, Maya decided to take her activism further. With the help of local organizers, she began planning a march through the city to demand justice for her father and push for broader reforms in law enforcement. The idea quickly gained traction, not just within her community but across the country. Flyers were printed, social media posts went viral, and soon, people from neighboring towns and cities pledged to join. Maya worked tirelessly alongside the activists who had reached out to her family after the funeral. They held meetings almost every evening, brainstorming ideas for the march and strategizing how to make it impactful. At first, Maya felt intimidated sitting among adults who seemed so confident and experienced. But they treated her with respect, valuing her input as someone directly affected by the issue. "This is your fight too," one organizer told her. "Your voice matters more than anyone else's here." The group decided the march would end at City Hall, where they planned to present a list of demands. Accountability for the officers involved in Marcus's death, mandatory body cameras for all police, stricter policies on use of force, and investment in community programs aimed at reducing crime without relying solely on policing. Every detail was carefully thought out, from the route to the chants participants would shout along the way. Maya even helped design posters and banners featuring her father's smiling face with the words, "Justice for Marcus, justice for all." As the date of the march approached, anticipation grew. Local news outlets covered the story extensively, drawing attention not only to Maya's personal tragedy, but also to the larger issues of systemic racism and police brutality. Celebrities used their platforms to spread the word, urging people to attend or donate to the cause. By the morning of the march, thousands had gathered at the starting point, a park near Maya's neighborhood. Standing on a small stage set up for speakers, Maya looked out at the massive crowd and felt a mix of awe and determination. People of all ages, races, and backgrounds had come together, united by a shared desire for change. Many carried signs bearing messages like "No justice, no peace," and "Black Lives Matter." Others held pictures of loved ones lost under similar circumstances. It was a powerful reminder that this wasn't just about her father, it was about everyone who had suffered unjustly. When it was time to begin, Maya stepped up to the microphone once again. Her voice was steady now, filled with resolve. "Today, we honor my dad and so many others whose lives were taken too soon," she said. "But honoring them isn't enough. We need action. We need change. Let's show the world that we won't back down until justice is served." With that, the march began. Thousands of feet pounded the pavement in unison, chanting slogans like "Say his name," "Marcus Johnson," and "Enough is enough." Drivers honked in solidarity as the procession moved through the streets, while residents leaned out of windows cheering them on. The energy was electric, a mix of sadness, anger, and hope propelling everyone forward. By the time they reached City Hall, the crowd had swelled even larger. Activists took turns addressing the audience, sharing stories of loss and resilience. Maya stood quietly during these moments, taking it all in. She realized that what started as a deeply personal journey had become part of something much bigger, a movement driven by love, courage, and an unshakable belief in a better future. That night, as Maya scrolled through photos and videos of the march online, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would still be difficult, but she knew she wasn't alone. Together, they had sent a clear message. Silence wasn't an option anymore. Change was coming, and Maya intended to be at the forefront of it. As Maya's story gained national attention, not everyone was supportive. While many praised her courage and rallied behind her cause, there were also those who criticized her efforts. Some online trolls accused her of exploiting her father's death for attention, while others dismissed the protests as pointless or overly emotional. "These marches won't change anything," one commenter wrote. "She should just move on." Reading these words stung, But Maya refused to let negativity derail her mission. The backlash wasn't limited to anonymous internet users. Local news outlets began airing debates about the effectiveness of protests like Maya's. Critics argued that focusing on individual cases distracted from larger systemic issues, while others claimed the movement was dividing communities instead of uniting them. Even some family friends quietly expressed concern, urging Maya's mother to protect her daughter from getting too involved. But Maya stood firm. She knew that staying silent would only allow injustice to continue unchecked. To cope with the criticism, Maya leaned heavily on her support system: her family, close friends, and the activists she had grown to trust. They reminded her that resistance often came with progress. People attacked Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and so many others who fought for justice. One organizer told her during a particularly tough day, "If they're coming after you, it means you're doing something right." Determined to keep moving forward, Maya started documenting her journey online. She created videos sharing updates about the case, reflections on her grief, and messages of gratitude for the growing number of supporters standing beside her. In one video, she addressed the critics directly. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of this. All I wanted was my dad back. But since he's gone, I'm going to make sure his life and his death means something. If that makes people uncomfortable, then maybe they need to ask themselves why." Her authenticity resonated with viewers, and her following continued to grow. People admired her resilience and vulnerability, seeing in her both a grieving daughter and a determined advocate. Strangers sent letters, artwork, and gifts to show their support, while others shared how her story inspired them to take action in their own communities. One woman wrote, "Your bravery gave me the strength to speak up about my brother's death. Thank you for being a light in the darkness." Despite the challenges, Maya remained focused on the bigger picture. She attended meetings with lawyers, lawmakers, and community leaders, learning more about the legal process and policy changes needed to prevent tragedies like her father's. Though the work was exhausting, she found moments of hope along the way. A local school board agreed to implement anti-bias training for teachers and staff. A small victory, but one that reminded Maya of the impact collective voices could have. As weeks turned into months, Maya learned an important lesson. Fighting for justice wasn't just about grand gestures or dramatic victories. It was about persistence, even when progress felt slow. It was about showing up, day after day, no matter how hard it got. And most importantly, it was about remembering why she started, to honor her father's memory and ensure no other family had to endure what hers did. One evening, as Maya sat on her porch watching the sunset, her younger brother joined her. "Do you think we'll ever win?" he asked softly. Maya smiled, putting an arm around him. "We already are," she replied. "Every person who listens, every mind we change, every step we take toward fairness, that's winning. We just have to keep going." Her voice was calm but resolute, carrying the weight of someone who had faced unimaginable loss, yet refused to give up. The fight was far from over, but Maya knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Months of relentless advocacy and public pressure finally began to bear fruit. The officers involved in Marcus Johnson's death were formally charged, and a trial date was set. For Maya and her family, this was a bittersweet moment. Justice was within reach, but the legal process promised to be long, grueling, and emotionally draining. Still, Maya felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew that attending every court session, no matter how painful, was part of honoring her father's memory. The courtroom became a second home for Maya during the trial. Each day, she sat in the front row with her mother and brother, listening intently as lawyers presented evidence and witnesses testified. It was difficult to hear the details of her father's final moments recounted in such clinical terms, but Maya refused to look away. She wanted the world to see Marcus not just as a victim, but as a man who had dreams, passions, and people who loved him deeply. Her presence in the courtroom served as a reminder of what was at stake. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered daily, holding signs and chanting slogans like "Justice for Marcus." and no more stolen fathers. Maya made it a point to thank them whenever she could, often stepping outside during breaks to express her gratitude. Their unwavering support gave her strength on days when the weight of everything felt unbearable. One elderly woman handed Maya a handwritten note that read, "Your father is proud of you. Keep fighting." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she hugged the woman tightly. As the trial progressed, tensions ran high. Defense attorneys tried to paint Marcus as someone who had provoked the situation, despite overwhelming evidence showing he posed no threat. Prosecutors countered by highlighting inconsistencies in the officers' testimonies and presenting video footage that contradicted their claims. Maya clenched her fists under the table whenever lies were told about her dad, but she held her composure, channeling her anger into resolve. Finally, after weeks of testimony, closing arguments were delivered. The jury deliberated for 3 agonizing days. During that time, Maya barely slept. She spent hours pacing her room, praying for justice while preparing herself for any outcome. When the verdict was announced, she held her breath as the foreman stood up. "Guilty on all counts," he declared. The courtroom erupted in cheers and tears. Maya's mother sobbed uncontrollably, gripping her daughter's hand. Maya herself felt numb at first, unable to fully process what had happened. Then, slowly, a wave of relief washed over her. Justice had been served, not just for her family, but for everyone who had rallied behind them. Outside, supporters celebrated, hugging one another and chanting victoriously. Someone started singing "Lift Every Voice and Sing," and soon the entire crowd joined in. While the guilty verdict brought a measure of closure, Maya understood that this was only one step toward broader change. Police brutality and systemic racism couldn't be solved overnight, but the conviction sent a powerful message. Accountability was possible. Journalists covering the case called it a landmark decision, citing the role of grassroots activism and public pressure in securing justice. Maya's courage had inspired others to believe that speaking out could lead to real results. That night, Maya sat alone in her room, staring at a photo of her father. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're not forgotten. And I promise, I'll keep going. For you, for us, for everyone." Though the road ahead would still be challenging, she felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that her father's legacy lived on, not just in her heart, but in the movement he had unknowingly sparked. Though the trial had ended and justice had been served, Maya knew her journey was far from over. Her father's death had left an unfillable void in her life, but it had also ignited a fire within her, a determination to ensure that no other family would have to endure the pain hers had. With the support of her community and newfound allies, she began channeling her grief into action, transforming her personal tragedy into something meaningful. One of Maya's first initiatives was creating a scholarship fund in her father's name. Marcus had always believed in the power of education to change lives, and Maya wanted to honor his legacy by helping students from marginalized communities pursue their dreams. The Marcus Johnson Memorial Scholarship provided financial assistance to aspiring educators, particularly those committed to teaching in underserved areas. At the inaugural ceremony, Maya stood before a room full of hopeful recipients and shared her father's favorite saying, "Teaching isn't just about lessons, it's about planting seeds of possibility." But Maya didn't stop there. She continued traveling across the country, speaking at rallies, schools, and conferences about systemic injustice and the importance of standing up for what's right. Her speeches were deeply personal, weaving stories of her father's kindness with calls for reform and unity. Audiences were captivated by her authenticity and passion, often rising to their feet in applause. One young woman approached her after a talk, tears streaming down her face. "You've given me hope," she said. "I lost my brother last year, and I thought no one cared. But hearing you makes me feel like maybe we can make a difference." Maya also collaborated with activists to push for policy changes at both local and national levels. She testified before lawmakers, sharing how her father's death had impacted her family and urging them to adopt measures that promoted accountability and transparency in law enforcement. Though progress was slow, small victories kept her motivated. When a bill requiring mandatory body cameras for police officers passed in her state, Maya celebrated the milestone as proof that persistence paid off. Despite the challenges she faced, Maya found joy in the connections she made along the way. She formed lifelong friendships with fellow advocates who understood her pain and shared her vision for a better future. Together, they organized workshops, mentorship programs, and community-building events aimed at empowering others to take action. Maya often joked that her father's spirit must be guiding her because doors seemed to open wherever she went. In quieter moments, Maya reflected on how much she had grown since that fateful night when she learned of her father's death. She was still the same girl who loved poetry, baking cookies with her dad, and watching sunsets, but she was also someone stronger, braver, and more resilient than she ever imagined she could be. Her mother often told her, "Your dad would be so proud of the woman you've become." And deep down, Maya knew it was true. Years later, as she stood on a stage accepting an award for her activism, Maya looked out at the crowd and smiled. "My father once told me that love is the most powerful force in the world," she said, her voice steady. "And today, I stand here as living proof of that. His love gave me strength, and your love has carried me forward. Together, we've shown that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope can rise, courage can flourish, and change is possible." As the audience erupted in applause, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the recognition, but for the countless people who had joined her in the fight for justice. Her father's memory lived on not only in her heart, but in the hearts of everyone whose lives he had touched, directly or indirectly. Through her work, Maya had transformed her pain into purpose, proving that even in the darkest times, love and resilience could spark extraordinary change.